Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some cards that are starting to see some play in the current format, or are starting to pop up on people's radar for the upcoming format. Now in the game right now, there aren't a ton of huge changes or tech cards that people are randomly incorporating, since I think a lot of Mitsurugi, Ryzeal, and Malice decks are actually pretty standardized. But there are definitely some techs that players are looking at heading into national season that might be interesting to try out, so we should be paying attention to those. And of course, players are always buying up cards early in order to get ready for the next couple of sets. Let's get started. Alright, so kicking things off, we have Mistaken Arrest. Now this is a really simple quick play spell card, and when you activate it, it prevents both players from searching until the end of your next turn after this card resolves. So there are some very notable differences between this card and Droll and Lockbird. This card lasts for 2 turns, so it affects your following turn as well, but at the same time it doesn't play as hard into cards like Talents, Crossout, or Called By, even though those are all at 1 now. However, Mistaken Arrest doesn't have to have your opponent search in order for you to activate this, so you can flip this up during standby phase, or you could chain it to something. So this card isn't a neg1 in the same way that Droll is. And of course, both players can still draw cards, so if you're playing a deck like Live Twins or Malice, this card might still be a strong option. And of course, your mulch armies are still going to be live if you happen to have no cards on the field after you've resolved Mistaken Arrest. Now, of course, Droll is a really popular card right now because decks like Mitsurugi, Ryzeal do so much searching every turn, so a card that's really similar in terms of what it does is naturally going to be pretty strong. Now with this card, it has 3 different printings. It has a gold rare and rare printing. Each of those were basically bulk before, but they're now up to around $1 to $2 each now. Not a crazy jump, but still up from the quarter or whatever it was before. The bigger spike is with the original print secret rares from Clash of Rebellion. They were down at around $8 to $10, but they've doubled in price over the last couple of weeks to just under the $20 mark. I feel like this is the sort of card that would get reprinted in a rarity collection type of set if Konami ever does decide to give us that sort of set again in the future. If not, it could definitely be in something like Battles of Legend as well. Personally, I would just grab a set of the lower rarity printings so that you have access to the card to play with, and then just offload your high rarity versions if you happen to have them. Next up, we have number 69 Heraldry Crest. So this card is a generic rank 4 Xyz monster that requires 3 level 4 monsters as material. This is a card that some players are teching into the Heraldic Beast Ryzeal extra deck. So on summon, this card negates the effects of all other face-up Xyz monsters on the field. Maybe not the most relevant effect, but it could shut down a detonator if they aren't expecting this to hit the board, or it could turn off Duo Drive's continuous effect as well. It also copies the effect of one other face-up Xyz monster on the field for the turn, which means that in Heraldic Beast Ryzeal, you can copy the effect of Evil Swarm Ouroboros to rip another card from the opponent's hand. However, the main thing is that you're able to use number 69 to climb into the 2 new versions of number 69 from Alliance Insight, both of which have slightly situational but still really useful effects. Now here in the TCG, number 69 technically has 1 printing, as it was a rare from back in Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy, so at the moment the card is quite difficult to find and it's going to cost you around $6 or $7. However, it's worth noting that the card actually has another super rare printing, but only in German from the 2014 Advent Calendar. Technically on TCG Player, this card has very few listings, but over in Europe, the super rare version is literally only 50 cents or so. It's just that the card isn't very common over here. This is a really strange one because the rare is also really high. As a general guideline, when we see those Advent Calendar supers shoot up in price, I wouldn't pay more for the super than you would have to pay for any other common or rare, but this is a card that has very limited availability anyways, so hopefully you guys have a friend in Europe that can send this over to you or something like that. However, this is still a really solid card to aim for when you are digging through your old bulk so that you can offload it. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. On to the next one, we have Tenpai Dragon Genroku. So Genroku was an interesting part of the Tenpai Dragon deck. It's basically a lone fire blossom for the strategy, but it also summons itself out just like Poplar. Now over time, I've seen people play anywhere from 1 to 3 copies of the card, since it's really strong, but it also feels like it can be a brick, or it's just really bad if you summon it and you get hit by Ash Blossom. Anyways, I think Tenpai has 3 or 4 cards that are now limited, but Tenpai Dragons have found a way back into the format alongside the Dragon Rulers with the new support they got in Alliance Insight. All the Tenpai cards are fire dragons, so they are searchable when Blaster is banished, and I think the general idea is that you can interact with your opponent first with your Dragon Ruler cards, and then when the game has simplified a bit, you can just kill them on the following turn with your Tenpai engine. Now the price of Genroku has gone up slightly for both of its printings. The Ultras were down at about $4. They had shot up to $10 at one point, but they're now back down to about $7. And then the card also has a QCR printing. They were only about $30 or so before, they're up to $40 now as well. All of the Tenpai cards are actually due to be reprinted in the 2025 tins. The thing is, I'm not 100% sure that Konami is actually going to reprint all of them because we've seen so many cards from the deck hit on the ban list. I do think that at the very least, they should give us both Pydra and Genroku in the tins, since we've seen some cards get OTS upgrades, and we also have Transcendent and Kaimin, both in that 2025 Worlds pack that's coming out in August. If you are interested in the deck, then obviously keep whatever quantity of this card it is that you're going to be using, but I'd probably recommend offloading your excess copies before the tins get here. Alright, there's one other card related to Dragon Rulers that I'm looking at here. Because it's a bit of an odd one, we have Pile Armed Dragon. So this card is a level 7 dragon, and you can summon it by sending another Wind Dragon or a level 7 or higher dragon from your hand to the graveyard. And it also does have an effect that has to do with the armed dragon monsters, probably not something that's going to be all that relevant. However, this card can be a free level 7 body that's really easy to bring out with the Dragon Ruler strategy, and then once you've used it as a link or Xyz material, you can also banish it for the cost of one of your other Dragon Ruler effects. Now obviously Dragon Rulers aren't the most meta relevant deck right now, but I believe they've made some top 4 or top 8 spots at a few regionals over the last couple of weekends, so still something that players are interested in looking at. However, this card is really worth noting because of how difficult it is to find. It only has 1 printing, as it was a promo that you could pull from Hidden Arsenal Chapter 1, which was probably one of the weaker sets that we've had over the last few years. There really wasn't anything that great in it, and you had to buy a mini box instead of just loose packs, right? So I think it was really just the super casual players or people that got Yu-Gi-Oh cards from their parents for Christmas that really actually opened the product and might have this card lying around. That said, it's not a crazy expensive card, but still this was only about $2 before, but it's now going to cost you about $4 to $5 per copy. Just something that's worth noting in case you happen to have these lying around. Okay, so we're onto some cards that are seeing demand for their future usage, and the first card here is DDD Marksman Kingtel. So this card is of course a DDD card, and it's a rank 5 that you can cheat out by using a rank 4 DDD Xyz monster. So DDD is getting new support in Doom of Dimensions, and they're getting a rank 4 monster that you can make and then go into Kingtel with. Kingtel's on-field effect isn't super relevant. However, if it's sent to the graveyard, you can send a DD or Dark Contract from your deck to the graveyard as well. So the idea is that you go into the rank 4, and before you link it off, you go into this card so that you can then dump a Necro Slime into the graveyard so that you can use its effect later on. Definitely a cool tech, but of course it's just a one-of since it is sort of a bridge piece. Now the thing with Kingtel is that it hasn't been printed in years. It was only ever a rare, once in Clash of Rebellion, and then it was in the tins from that year as well. Because of that, a copy of this card is going to cost you around $5 to $7. It's a little bit weird because the tin reprint is technically more expensive than the original printing. Just make sure you check both listings on TCG Player if you're going to be buying one. I feel like this card should get a common or super rare OTS reprint closer to the release of Doom of Dimensions, so if you want to play DDD in the future, maybe keep like your one copy for yourself to use, but definitely dig these up out of your bulk and try to offload them while they are seeing so much hype. Next up, here's a pretty interesting card. It's Heavy Polymerization. So this card was only available in the 2024 tins. It was a TCG exclusive, but it was imported over to the OCG at the end of last year. Now this card is basically a regular polymerization, but only for a fusion monster that requires 3 or more monsters as material. However, it does let you use material from the extra deck. The cost is that you lose life points equal to the total attack points of all the monsters used from the extra deck, and it also banishes those materials instead of sending them to the graveyard. So this card does seem sort of interesting. It doesn't really feel like there's a good place to use it. The only thing that I really thought of initially was something like Melodious. However, it seems that some players are looking at this as a tech card in Lunalights, which are getting some new support in Duelist Advance. It's interesting to keep track of because Lunalights aren't the best deck in the OCG by any means, but they've surprised players as a pretty strong contender. They're still viable, but it's still early, and they're still experimenting with a lot of different tech choices. That said, Heavy Polymerization was basically bulk from the tins before. It was only around $1 card. However, over the last couple of weeks, it has shot way up in price and is now coming in at $5 to $6 per copy. Of course, it's still early, so we're gonna have to see how it is that Lunalight players in the TCG eventually adapt, but it'll be fun to see this really interesting card hopefully get to see a little bit of play. And finally, the last card we have for today is number C104, Umbral Horror Masquerade. So this card is of course one of the chaos numbers, and it's definitely an interesting one. At first I thought that this card was being used with 7th Tachyon, where you search for a level 5 dark monster. However, that's actually not the case. It turns out that this is something that Vanquished Soul Canine is actually looking to use in their extra deck, since they can use Nash Knight to attach a number 104 to it, then go into Chaos Xyz Nash Knight and make this card, and now you actually have a C104 with number 104 underneath it. This may seem like a lot of steps to go through, but C104 is probably one of the craziest cards in the game. On summon, you can pop a back row, but what you're really after is that during either player's turn, you can negate an activated monster effect, then send a card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard and cut their life points in half. Obviously, this is an insane effect, probably because Konami never really expected players to actually be able to bring this thing out, but I guess power creep is a crazy thing. Anyways, this card was only ever available in one set, Judgment of the Light, which came out back in 2013, which means these are all more than a decade old. Because of that, both rarities are now really expensive. The ultimate rares are coming in at $60 each, while the supers are $35. And the crazy thing is that the card is actually moving at these prices based on the sold listings on TCG Player. Hopefully, this one gets a reprint in the next few months, or maybe even in Justice Hunters itself. It is a really niche card, but it wouldn't surprise me to see this in a lot of players' extra deck in a few months, especially given that Vanquished Soul Canine is probably going to be one of the best decks in the format. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely going to be a lot of interesting stuff leading up to the Nationals format. Of course, the next big thing is that we do have Battles of Legend coming out in just a couple of weeks, so hopefully we get those reveals coming out within the next few days or the next week or so that we can finally know all of the different stuff, and we're certainly going to see a ton of movement on the market because of all of the amazing support coming in there for like Orcust, Dragon Maid, Punk. It's definitely going to be a fun time. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.